Now live. Welcome. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole of the Information and Public Records Service Team. We are excited to hear from this service team headed up by Deputy County Manager Karen Francoise. I am super excited about this. We're going to hear about our Residents First work with our navigators and with our how we're doing with our enterprise services. And just excited. And I think many of you may know this, I've been asking for, takeaways or, what are the takeaways that a presenter wants us to take away from their presentation? We will actually, take away whatever we can, but they've done this time and they've started with the takeaways. So they're going to start with what they want us to get out of this presentation. And I really appreciate that. So with that, thank you so much, Deputy County Manager Francoise, and I will hand it off to you to do the introductions.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning to you and good morning, commissioners. Good morning, County Manager O'Connor, and to any community members or staff who may be watching also, good morning. For the record, my name is Karen Francoise and I'm the Deputy County Manager for the Information and Public Records Service Team. I do want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and give an update on the work that we have been doing. With me today are Acting IPR Administration Director, Karen Shea, and I'm very pleased to introduce Melinda Donaway as our new permanent Enterprise Services Manager. I believe she's been on the job permanently for 2 weeks now, but she has been doing an excellent job as the redeployed manager for several months now. So welcome, Melinda, to your first board presentation. In 2018, when I first started here in Ramsey County, the then Health and Wellness Deputy County Manager, Ryan O'Connor, called me within the first 2 weeks of my being on the job and said that he wanted to put together a group of people from the Health and Wellness Service Team and the Information and Public Records Service Team to discuss how we could redesign the way we deliver Ramsey County services in a more resident-centric way. So we did, and what grew out of that first meeting was the establishment of Residents First as one of the top priorities in the county, and also the establishment of the Residents First program, which focuses on Residents First facilities and Residents First service delivery. Countless hours went into gathering a lot of resident and employee and commissioner feedback, and 3 board workshops and a global pandemic later, we've now come before you to give you an update on the Residents First service delivery work. As you know, the pandemic accelerated our need to redesign services to meet our residents where they're at under the auspices of the IMT structure. So for today, the 3 takeaways that, and Karen, if you will go to that slide, the key takeaways for today, first of all, we want you to know that the Residents First service delivery work to date and the actions that we've taken under the incident management team have been operationalized in enterprise services. We also want you to know that enterprise services lives in the Information and Public Records Service Team, but it must be and will be and is an organization-wide and community collaboration. We also want you to know that enterprise services brings the Residents First vision to life by involving community at every stage and moving navigator services into the community. I am now going to turn it over to Melinda to start off the presentation for you. Melinda?
All right. Thank you, Deputy County Manager Francois. Really happy to be here, Madam Chair and Commissioners and County Manager O'Connor. I'm going to talk about enterprise services, where we're at and sort of where we're going, and then pass it off. So enterprise services, the objective is to dramatically transform how the county delivers services by engaging residents and employees to provide the best possible resident experience and outcomes. This was developed based on work to date, including project work, input from residents and staff and previous board workshops. And as Karen mentioned, service delivery work has both interrupted and accelerated by COVID. So I'd like to briefly review the work to date. Go to the next slide, please. All right. Major deliverables completed in 2019 included an establishment of a Residents First program to oversee and align all Resident First related activities. The Resident First Facilities Plan. This work is led by Jean Kruger. As you remember, the plan was delivered in a board workshop in late 2019. And this served to set the vision for future state enterprise service facilities in general locations. And St. Paul Opportunity Center has to be noted here, a cooperative effort, as you all know, between the county, multiple community organizations, and other government programs. SPOC really provides huge, valuable insight into an integrated service delivery model, and is one of the first non-service center locations that we have embedded navigator services. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Each of these initiatives prioritize community engagement and input with a race equity lens throughout. And we know that this work is foundational to the work that we're doing today and going forward. So planned activities for 2020 include a development of an integrated service delivery capability, including mobile services and a team of navigators, continuation of this Residents First facilities work, development of tech strategies to support enterprise services, and resident tech equity, and communication and organizational change management strategies to bring staff along in the process. And we know that that is critical. We go to the next slide, thank you. So in response to COVID, by May, Customer Contact Center, or the 8500 line, was used to streamline resident access via phone. Document drop boxes were placed to offer more contactless alternatives. General service counters used to provide safe in-person transaction, and website updates to include major expansion of the county website for all things COVID to provide up-to-date information online. All of these actions were taken and intended to provide as many channels or methods of connecting with the county as possible. As summertime set in June and July, the service center planning was in high gear. I think that's a small way to say that in terms of my experience. Adjustments were being made on the fly based on usage as well as resident and staff feedback. And then came August, and we launched 5 service centers. We opened in August in the East Building and Plato Building, what we now call it Downtown Service Center and Westside Service Center, and 3 Ramsey County libraries, Maplewood, Roseville, and Shoreview. Each service center includes public computer or resource centers with internet access and printing. 3 of the service centers have community career labs operated by Workforce Solutions, a strong partnership there. 19 redeployed staff from across the county, 5 financial workers embedded in each of the service centers as subject matter experts. And service center staff went through a pretty intensive week of training in the 4 initial areas, which are social services, financial assistance services, workforce solutions, and IPR, property tax services. Areas with the most critical impact for which we could truly start to make the one county, one door a reality. Thanks. So I'm talking about the transition moving into the 4th quarter. So very quickly after standing up the service centers, we started the process to operationalize, which continued through the 4th quarter. Oversight of the service center moved from incident management team into the service team structure and information and public records. And as needs arose, we added new additional services to the service centers, including a virtual connection capability for Ramsey County Court System, as well as the acceptance of absentee ballots leading up to the general election in November. It was a wild time. We saw these as small wins to show the versatility of the Navigator model. And we expanded Navigator services. We stood up a Navigator call center in November. I was very proud to have our own number and everything. And added 5 limited duration temporary staff in December, enabling us to move Navigator services beyond the walls of service centers and into the community. So this is truly an exciting time for this work. It is in community where we're finding our rhythm and really being able to see the mission and vision truly carried out. We'll discuss more on how we're adjusting Navigator services to increase our work and our presence in the community. These are the first steps towards meeting residents where they are and how they want to be connected. And the ability to connect virtually to Navigator services is also in the works. We began the planning to move staff from redeployment to regular staff positions and determine funding sources as we move through the transition in the stand-up of enterprise services team. In 2020, activities were CARES funded. 2021 is funded by Residents First program. And starting in 2022, enterprise services will need to be levy funded. All right, let's talk about enterprise services currently. So all service center operations are fully operationalized within information and public records. The 5 service centers, as you can see on the slide there. So we have some exciting changes coming up, which will impact the West Side Service Center and Shoreview Service Center. Navigator services will be moving out of West Side and Shoreview Service Centers effective April 5th. These pivots are based on usage to date and resident and staff feedback, but this is exciting because we'll be expanding Navigator services in the community and in partnership with other services and community organizations in which have already shown significantly higher resident engagement. I'll provide more detail on this in a minute. Public computers will continue at Shoreview Library location with staff library responsible for administering and assisting users. Public computers will not be offered at the West Side and Plater building. So Navigator services in the community, as you can see, we have partnered pretty strongly with the Ramsey County shelters that are currently in operation. We're at Capitol Ridge, Como, Mary Hall, Bethesda, and then planning on being in Luther as that gets more up and running. We're currently providing Navigator services in 5 locations for 18 hours a week and expanding to 20 hours shortly. And then as of April 5th, we'll be expanding to 25 to 26 hours a week. And there is a huge need. We've seen approximately over 100 Navigator engagements with residents since we launched in outreach at the end of December. So this is in comparison to Navigator engagements within the service centers of around 290 since the very start in August, and the bulk of those being downtown. So we're seeing this number just grow and grow as we start to maintain this partnership within community settings. We're working to establish partnerships right now and set up additional locations in targeted areas, such as Suburban Ramsey Family Collaborative, Neighborhood House, St. Paul Public Schools, and local community clinics. Minnesota Community Care, Phelan Village, Open Cities, for example, try to spread out. Recently, to share a little success story, a Navigator was working with a resident at Best Western Capitol Ridge. And this resident was having trouble getting their case transferred from another county. I'm sure, as you all know and can imagine and have heard from constituents, many residents are really confused about what programs they're currently enrolled in, or the reason for why their services are on hold, and just frustrated with navigating the complex webs of professionals and departments that it takes to sort it all out, and the time. The Navigator was able to connect with the worker from the other county and get the case transferred, engage with the resident to determine which programs and services they'd like to pursue, and then connect directly with the embedded financial worker to apply for the services on the spot and initiate the processing of that application. The staff left and I got an unprovoked text, I promise, just saying, I am just so invigorated and thrilled with what's happening. They are so thankful that we're there. We can really see the impact of what we're doing. And it's amazing from the staff perspective to watch the systems work that you know are so complicated yourself. So it's just validating the experiences that we're seeing in the community. And a staffing update. The managers and supervisors are in place, and we're in second round interviews this week for navigator and customer support assistants. And so we anticipate start dates in early April. So I will pass it to Karen Shea to talk about enterprise services for 2021.
Thank you, Melinda. Commissioner and Madam Chair and County Manager, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to, now that Melinda's brought us up to speed, kind of how we got to where we are today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the plan going forward. We have set up we've contracted with a project manager and an organizational change management consultant to help us through the plan going forward. Those are both being funded through Residents First program. Most notably, we've set up a structure to ensure that this work is truly collaborative and cross-county and involves community. And that involves 2 advisory councils, Operations Advisory Council, or the OAC, and the Senior Advisory Council. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how these councils will be structured. The Operational Advisory Council will be chaired by Melinda, and they have their first meeting starting next week. This council includes mid-level representation from all service teams as well as community members. The council is intended to be a standing advisory group and will have rotating membership on what kind of cadence. We don't know that. The council will help determine that. And ultimately, the role of this council is continuous improvement. It's fine-tuning the engine as we drive down the road. Some of the near-term priorities for this group will be training and training plans for the service center staff, assessing the current operations, what we've stood up, what works, what doesn't work, and working together to identify solutions, clarifying roles, so clearly defining the navigator role in relation to the programs and services they support, standardizing the process for onboarding or integrating additional services, fostering open collaboration across all departments at the operational level, and finally, looking for opportunities to measure our performance. The Senior Advisory Council, as the Acting Director of IPR Administration, at this point, I'm leading this team. Again, this council is comprised of senior level representation from all service teams, as well as community representation. Like the Ops Council, this is intended to be an ongoing standing team with rotating membership. To continue the analogy, this team is charged with determining the final destination, as well as the route, or dare I say, the navigation system for how we're going to get there in coordination with the operations team. The near priorities for this team are clearly defining scope. We have terms like enterprise services, there's the service centers, there's navigator services that aren't necessarily tied to a service center. They're all interrelated, but we need to fully understand and articulate the scope and definition of each and make sure that everybody's on the same page. This team will also be in charge to create an ongoing ownership of the roadmap and blueprint. The blueprint, I'm sure you're familiar with from modernization efforts, is the where we want to go, and the roadmap is how we'll get there. This team will also make sure that our efforts stay in alignment with other county initiatives, most notably right now, our Residents First facilities and the preschool development grant. And then finally, this group will develop a cohesive plan for the public computers across the counties. We currently have 3 different sets of public computers across the county, and each has different access and usage policies. And we felt that there's a need to develop a plan to streamline and simplify usage here, not only for the residents, but for support and administrative purposes as well. So that aligns very well with what this group is going to be doing. Throughout, this group will be providing ongoing governance, including issue resolution if needed for the Operations Council, and will be champions for change. Next, I'd like to share some of the foundations which will guide the work of these councils. We've laid out 5 guiding principles, And like the objective, which Melinda shared, these are based on previous work as well as board input from previous workshops, community feedback, and alignment with the county values. Our 5 principles are as follows. We need to deliver services in a manner that are resident-centric, so that we're meeting residents with kindness, empathy, and knowledge. They're engaged throughout the process and can see themselves in their interactions with the county. We need to advance racial equity, prioritizing underserved communities, which more often than not are racially and ethnically diverse communities, and those with the greatest needs. And as always, ensure ongoing community engagement to guide our decisions and actions. We need to remove barriers to accessing services. So meeting residents where they are, whether those are our buildings or elsewhere in the community, and also being flexible to adjust to changes in residents' needs and the usage that we're seeing, as Melinda already discussed. We need to make sure we're delivering the same level of service, regardless of how residents choose who are able to connect with us, and that residents are able to communicate with us in their preferred language. These last 2 guiding principles, obviously reflect back the conversation that you all just had in the board meeting regarding centering on equity and equitable access. And so they're very key to the whole process here. The 4th principle we've set out is to improve service effectiveness. So moving the complexity of navigating our systems away from the resident and to make it the responsibility of the county, as well as providing ongoing employee skills development and education around all of our service offerings to ensure that employees can initiate connecting residents to the services they need. The last guiding principle we've set out is to build a culture of service. The success of everything that we're trying to do in enterprise services is rooted in culture change. We need to build and foster a culture that's resident-centric and solution-focused. We need to promote a spirit of service with kindness, empathy, and respect for all. And we need to engage and support and inspire employees along this journey. To me, this principle is about our leadership value. Employees who embrace a spirit of service demonstrate leadership in every interaction and provide the best possible resident experience. I'd also like to take a minute to share a fairly recent personal story that I think illustrates this very well. My father passed away in early December, and the day after he passed, my 85-year-old mother reached out to the Social Security Administration. Different level of government, but I think you'll see where I'm going here soon. She wanted to make sure that she notified them and got the process going so there wouldn't be any missed payments or overpayments or those types of things. Over the next couple months, my mother initiated contact with the agency 5 times. Each time she was told an appointment was set, the appointment time came and went, and she followed up and was told there was no record of a previous contact, there was no appointment, there was no action pending. Sadly, this is a prime example of the level of service that many people have come to expect from government. So one day, out of the blue, my mother received a call from Ms. Kennedy of the Social Security Administration. She said she was reviewing files and saw a flag on my mom's file, and she was reaching out to see if she could help with anything. Ms. Kennedy started the paperwork that day. She followed up with my mother several times over the 2 weeks it took to complete the process. So after 3 months of runaround, she completed everything in 2 weeks. That is spirit of service. That is putting the resident or the customer at the center of our service. And it's a foundational principle of the enterprise service work we are doing to build a county of Ms. Kennedy's and make that level of service the standard, not the exception. So in order to do so, we've identified 3 keys to success to achieving our objective and honoring those 5 principles. And those, again, are ongoing cross-county collaboration at all levels, continuous and ongoing community and staff engagement throughout, and identifying specific, meaningful performance indicators, the majority of which will come from our residents and employees, correct? So we want to spend the last few minutes looking at a few examples that will help us know when we're making progress. Residents will help us gauge our progress through continuous feedback, both directly and indirectly through community partners, as well as your offices, as you well know. We will know that we're making progress when our resident feedback reflects that residents feel valued, respected, and seen. Residents from underserved populations and those with the greatest needs have the services they require. Residents are reporting they're able to connect with us where and how they choose and in their preferred language. And residents overall are reporting fewer unmet needs. From an employee standpoint, we'll solicit feedback from them as well. But the TARP work that's being done around behavior alignment with the county values, as well as the updated performance appraisal template in development, will give us some valuable insight and show us if employees are actively demonstrating a focus on resident needs and spirit of service. They are exhibiting greater ability to recognize and take action in addressing inequity and biases. Employees have a broader knowledge of our service offerings to more successfully connect residents. And finally, employees take pride in their work and positively represent the county. So at a very high level, how might we know the transformation is happening? In the short term, we're looking for enterprise-wide awareness and support of the enterprise services work and vision. An increased number of residents enrolled in county services because we've removed those barriers, or at least lessened them. That we will be connecting with residents in more locations via more channels and with more successful incomes. And longer term, we'll know that transformation is truly happening, that when all employees embody a culture of service every day, we have overall fewer requests for new services because the needs of the residents are being met. And finally, that residents report that they view the county as a trusted partner. This is when we'll know that we have truly achieved one county, one door, and that every door is the right door. That's the end of our presentation. Karen, did you want to have some closing comments that you wanted to make?
I think, Madam Chair, if we would like to have questions right now, that would be great.
And Karen, if I could add maybe just 2 quick points on the way in,
Yep.
Madam Chair. So I appreciate the work today, and hopefully what the board sees is how the conversation we had upstairs last year across like almost a working session during one of our COVID planning days last summer, and those initial principles which carried across the organization and in conversations with community members are now moving into a codified set of direction forward on the behavioral side and how we are building a structure around the work to move it from a temporary solution to a long-term path. The other piece that's a big deal is the physical piece to the service centers. And this took me a little while. Karen got to walk me through this a number of times before we get to today. But as we look at numbers, and we could talk more about some of those numbers and what we've just seen huge differences in terms of the use of different sites. I mean, very significant. And our dashboard shows some of that if we were to go online and look at it right now. And so the 3 sites we are focusing on, a downtown site, which right now remains the East Building, but long-term will need to be something other than that building. And the 2 libraries where we've seen large usage, coupled with a switch from the other 2 locations at Plato and Shoreview to a community-centered service center, which will move locations day to day, and then a virtual service center, which will be staffed by navigators, the same navigators that'll work in physical locations, but with an online presence and a phone presence. And so it's a 5 service center approach, but we're modifying as we go. And the last thing I would just say, where I really appreciate the work of this team, is that we started out in these conversations around behaviors, bucket, structure in one space, and then the part about locations and current traffic and where we're trying to go in another. And in a moment of conversation for me, what I said is, how do we make this the vision that the board holds, that the county administration holds, all the way through to the staff in the building, or serving as a navigator? Once we have that, then we have a plan. And Karen has worked with her team throughout this transition to IPR to bring that to where we got to today. And so that's really the manifestation of where we're at as we go forward. This will clearly be a priority in the biennial budget. as we move forward into the next biennium. And with that, Madam Chair, I will be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager O'Connor, and thank you all of you for your presentation. This is very exciting work, and we have a number of commissioner questions, so I will go right to those. So I'll start with Commissioner McDonough, and I'm sorry I didn't catch the order, but I have Commissioner McDonough, then Fretham, Carter, and Matas Castillo.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you guys go back to the guiding principle slide? I couldn't see the number, so but the guiding principle slide, if you could go back to that one real quick, that would be helpful. And this is really good work. And Ryan, to your point, absolutely. I see things that have been incorporated since last year and the conversations with the board, and I really feel excited about the work and have a lot of confidence in how this is moving forward. I got a couple of comments or thoughts here. You know, and I'm going to go up to the guiding principles on the delivering services in the manner, and I, you know, hopefully you don't interpret this as being nitpicky or wordsmithing, but you got it. Residents are met with kindness, empathy, and knowledge. And then that last bullet point there, residents see a reflection in themselves in interactions with the county, and that's really great. But that really is intended to help us make sure that we have the diversity and our workforce looks like the folks that are coming into our door. You know, I think I shared at the last time we had here this concept around navigators and how supportive I was, because I think one of the things that my office learned early on for us to be successful is Joanne had to learn to become a navigator for our constituents, for the people that called our office, and she had to learn how to do that, and she had to learn how to do it really good. And it was really, you know, I think someone asked, what do you see as success? And to me, the success would be when Joanne no longer has to navigate for anybody who makes our phone calls in a way that actually benefits our constituents and residents. And I think we're on that path. But one of the biggest feedback issues that I always got, I mean, a number of them, but one big one was always this: staff just didn't feel like that they'd never felt like staff listened or had a connection, right? And so, you know, to really emphasize this kindness, empathy, and knowledge, you know, a bullet point where it says staff see a reflection of themselves in the interaction with our residents, because that makes that connection. So it really calls that out in a way that hopefully reminds staff it's not just about trying to get through that call so they can get the next one. It's not just about ensuring that they're in compliance with all the things we have to be in compliance, and they got to do all that stuff, but they can do it in a way that sends a message, and the interaction they're having with that individual really does recognize kindness, empathy, and knowledge, and not so much just trying to get through that phone call. And then the other piece that I'll just provide some feedback on, and this may be coming down the line, because long-term, the solution isn't just us making sure we're providing navigators so that to help our residents navigate our bureaucracies better, right? The long-term solution is actually breaking down our bureaucracies so that it actually works in a way that meets everybody's needs. And Ryan, I think you'll recall when you were deputy county manager, I think all of us interact with the county at some level outside of us being a county commissioner, but most of you know Peggy lives with us. We're her guardian. She has Down syndrome. We have she has a county manager. She has MA. She goes through a lot of the stuff so many folks go through that call our office, so we get to experience it. And, you know, sharing the story with Ryan that, you know, every January, you know, Carol has to fill out the paperwork to get Peggy's MA renewed so that she doesn't lose continuity. And without fail, and there's a due date, you have to have it in by, you can't send it before this day. Don't send it before this day, but send it, but you have to have it this day. It's like a 2-week window. She does that, you know, without fail. And without fail, you know, 5 days later, she gets a letter from the county saying, we have not received your application. Peggy's benefits will be suspended at the end of the month. And then it, you know, so it was always frustrating. So I actually asked Carol to just write down every interaction, everything that she did. And I showed it to Ryan. And it was 2 pages of legal paper of phone calls and interactions and things to get to, we received Peggy's application for MA and her coverage will be continued, which should have happened with the first letter she got, right? Because she followed everything. And, you know, during that, I learned some things, right? We just have this policy. We send out that letter to everybody because it's easier than actually sending it to the people who we didn't get the applications from, because you have to kind of go through and document. But there's a lot of bureaucracy we created in that process. And, you know, hopefully as our navigators start seeing that and they start giving the feedback, that we get to this long-term goal of actually breaking down the bureaucracies that we've created. I know a lot of it's, you know, federal requirements, state requirements. There's a lot of things we can't do. We could be influential there. You know, Tony sits on the Human Service Redesigning Committee that we've had going with AMC for years, right? But to bring back specific things. So we can, you know, start at home, but we have influence in other places. But, you know, Karen, you and your team are doing amazing work, but, you know, I just, you know, big picture, longer term, it's going to take more than just making sure we have really good navigators to help people get through this stuff. It's eliminating some of the stuff. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Commissioner McDonough. Well said. And what an amazing example. So thank you for that. All right. Continuing with questions, Commissioner Fretham and then Carter.
Thank you, Chair McGuire, and thank you, Commissioner McDonough. Program simplification, I think especially for us as the policymaking body and on our legislative front, really needs to be a priority and a message we continue. I you know, one of the reasons I constantly talk about technology is because we are so limited. We're so limited at the county and how we administer programs with these state-run systems, which are so old, which, you know, print off that hard-to-read pages of legalese and make it really hard for people to understand what they're getting and what their responsibilities are. And not only do we need to push the state government in those pre-printed documents to ensure they're abiding by the call for plain language, but also we need to think about how do we present things in a way that are really readable for people and easy to understand. So thank you for bringing that up, reiterate it on all fronts, both in making the laws simpler, reducing the barriers as we've seen through COVID, which really helps people access those programs, and then also finding ways to make it just easy to understand what's being done. My initial hand raise was actually in terms of the shift in locations. I completely understand if the Shoreview location is not getting a lot of walk-in folks. That makes sense to me. It's not particularly accessible by public transit. And our area here in Shoreview and the immediately surrounding suburbs with Arden Hills and North Oaks are fairly wealthier than other cities in Ramsey County. My primary concern is really about the city of Mounds View. Because it is one of our cities here in Ramsey County that has one of the highest poverty rates, some of the lowest median income. It's one of our youngest cities, and they have extremely sparse public transit opportunities. And not that they could have accessed the Shoreview site by public transit, but now this leaves their closest site, Roseville, which is about 9 miles from the city center, farther from folks on the edges there of Mounds View. And I know I had the opportunity to speak with their city council earlier this year and to talk a bit about what we're doing here in Ramsey County. And I mentioned our service centers, and they were excited and noting that they have a high population of residents who may be in need of services, but also that Shoreview is still even far for them in Roseville, and their willingness and interest in partnering with the county potentially at their community center, knowing our Ramsey County Library in Mounds View is quite small and in need of some updates, but that they might be a community partner who'd be willing to engage to provide an opportunity for service delivery in their area for their residents. Alternatively, I know we already have WIC Center in the New Brighton Community Center, which is another one of our suburban cities that has higher poverty rates and would be closer to, and I'm just giving a tip to Melissa or whoever's sharing their screen that we can see your message, just FYI, nothing terrible is being shown, but I want to help you out there. And just noting that we're continuing to build, we're continuing to figure things out, really want to advocate for some intentional outreach in the Mounds View area to ensure that our residents there still have access to these opportunities, and knowing that we have a city council there that was really interested in that, and that folks out there don't necessarily have a lot of options to access services, and they're doing a really great job really trying to build out their affordable housing, and I want to recognize that and partner with them on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fretham. All points well taken as far as I'm concerned, since that's part of the county that I represent as well, with New Brighton and Mounds View. So thank you for making those points. And just to say that, Melinda, you were immediately responding to what Commissioner Fretham was saying. We were proud, we were excited to see that. So with that, I will call on Commissioner Carter and then Mattis Castillo.
Madam Chair, would it be possible?
Oh,
I think Deputy County Manager Francois might have a comment back to Commissioner McDonough and or Fretham, and then we can maybe bite a couple off if possible.
Oh, thank you. That's a good point. I'm sorry if I missed that hand raise. So thank you, County Manager. All right, Deputy County Manager Francois.
Yes, Commissioner Fretham first. We are going to be increasing the number of outreach hours that we have in our communities. So we would be more than happy to look into the Mounds View area as well. Melinda, I'm sure, has taken a note of that, and we will be talking about that very soon. Commissioner McDonough, one of the recently we had a very heroic thing happen within one of our services in IPR. I think you'll recall that one of our elections officials actually drove out to a woman's home and brought her a check. This is what I said to my team. That's great, but those are the kinds of heroics that we have to eliminate by changing the system and the process. Right. Residents First is really about not having to perform heroic. And so it's something that, you know, within IPR, having been in the process of modernization for the last number of years, that we think about often. And I really appreciate you talking about that, because it's something that, you know, I want our team to constantly be aware of. You know, I think it's really great if something happens, if it's a freak kind of thing, you know, great. Someone can get in their car and drive over and, you know, drop off a check. But in reality, we do know that Residents First is about having the processes and the practices in place that make it unnecessary to do those kinds of heroics.
Thank you, Deputy County Manager. What did anyone else? Did Melinda or Karen? Did you want to respond to either Commissioner Fretham or McDonough? But that was great, and I will call on you after comments if you'd like to add after we get the questions. So now we are on to Commissioner Carter, and then Mattis Castillo, and then Ortega. Commissioner Carter.
Thank you. This is just so delightful to see how this work has rolled out. And now to hear you talk about it being operationalized, it seems as though it happened overnight. And we're very, very thankful, because the context of when it needed to happen is, of course, over history. So we're so thankful. I understand from Deputy County Manager Francoise's last comment that this really is about creating the everyday hero opportunities. Every day, every member of our team should be able to be a Miss Kennedy. And so our evaluation processes coming forward need to be about how easy it is to find Miss Kennedy and how easy it is to be Miss Kennedy. You know, so I look forward to hearing how you create measures to establish and to keep track too. You know, maybe this isn't the measurement, but this is the logging to keep track of the questions we get, because they are going to be, although everybody is different, they are going to be of a sort that we can categorize, and that can help us in our service center implementation to put those answers up front. You know, so as many people as possible can find out, how do I, you know, or how can I get help with, you know, how do I apply for, whatever those questions are can be moved up front so that Miss Kennedy, you know, can be automated, you know, in some cases. And I really like the fact that you're looking at the physical sites, and you also have the phone implementation and the online implementation and the consulting services to help us manage the change along with the advisories. All of this is just so, it seems very well structured to get us to where we need to be. I had a quick question about front door versus case management. You know, of course, with the individuals that we have right now who are performing that navigator role, they have general knowledge. You know, and hopefully can keep track of the questions so that we're pushing Miss Kennedy up front as much as possible and building more knowledge in those individuals. I don't think they'll ever get to a point though where entire case management will be done, you know, at this interface. That's still going to be in other areas, I'm sure. I just wanted a little bit of feedback on that. And then I've got another question about locations and populations, which could be addressed with our community partnerships, and I'm assuming that it will. So on that first question about front door versus case management.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Who would like to just wave your hand? Whoever wants to address that, you take it. I guess Melinda, you'll take it first. Okay.
I can take it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Great question, Commissioner Carter. This is something that we do talk about consistently as we're kind of onboarding new ways to do services with navigators, specifically with the standing up of the phone center. And then now there's a referral form where anybody themselves, staff or service provider can enter in on online referral form, similar to the Ask Human Services methods that we receive within departments. And that sparked the question about how far does this go till we turn into sort of managing the case? And it's an ongoing question, and I think we're going to need to uncover and discuss within the advisory council, specifically the operations advisory council. So how far do we go to where we become a financial worker or a social services, social worker, or other parts of the county? So it's definitely ongoing. There's not a definite answer, but we're doing our best to sort of identify this is where that one each deep goes for the navigator, and then we pass along.
And if I could add just one piece to that, Melinda, I think your role in leading JDAI work in the past is actually a pretty good comp, which is we didn't want to become the probation officers. They play a super important role, and the minute you pretend they don't, you will fail at your work. What's changed is how judges think about their front door role and where that goes, and then how we as a system are structured to meet that work, not in the same silos as in the past. I do think there's some good comparisons there that guide us from a structural standpoint. Melinda's right about like where the exact breakdowns will occur is something that we'll need to work out through the teams that she and Karen will be leading.
Yeah. Thank you. And I did anticipate that it is an iterative process that we're in right now as we figure out what works and how deep to go or how to refer effectively. It's all about finding Miss Kennedy, right? So we'll figure out where Miss Kennedy is best located in different circumstances. I see Karen's hand.
Yeah, yes. Karen, do you want to? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Carter, one of the things that we've learned from modernization is the Kaizen approach, which is, being in a constant state of improvement. And so in everything we do within IPR, that is our thought. We learned by taking each one of our departments through the modernization process and taking so many of our staff, if not all of them, through Kaizen sessions. We have really given people the opportunity to constantly be thinking of how to improve our services. So, and that's one of the things that we talked about when the then DCM Ryan O'Connor wanted to pull together the folks from health and wellness and IPR was, you know, how do we improve the way we deliver our services? So we're constantly thinking of ways, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your input, all of your input today and always. Your feedback is really important, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The last question then I have is about the locations. You know, as you're restructuring the locations to fit use, of course, we have areas of our county that may not be as well served physically as others. So as you look at the partnerships that you'll be establishing to ensure that we have the depth that we need in those geographic areas, as well as, you know, that we have the cultural engagement and applicability that we need, how will you know, what are your criteria for those community partnerships that will need to be established to ensure we're able to be out and about in the ways in which we want to be with the mobile teams and, you know, co-location opportunities?
Thank you. Okay, Karen Shea.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner Carter. One of the structures that we need to put in place as well is to formalize how we do that and how we identify those opportunities. That's one of the things that Melinda and her supervisors have been working on already. But now that we have them in place in their regular staff positions, that's one of the charges that they have, is to develop that network to be able to identify the opportunities, identify where residents are, and as that's moving, what's working, et cetera, and to be able to build that network of locations. We've also been in discussions with communications to be able to enlist their help on getting that word out that we're saying we're looking for partners that we can provide navigation services at their location. So it's a work in progress, but I think with Melinda and her supervisors in place, they've already got a lot of these connections. And so they're working on their existing connections, but we're working on formalizing that.
Thanks. And I know that it will engage geography and culture and language so that we are sure we have that portfolio that we need for effective communication. Thank you. And, you know, just probably I should go back and circle. This is a real quick one. We are keeping track then and building that intelligence around what we need to put online, what we need to put on the phone, how we need to develop those artificial intelligence processes that help people. That's a nod, huh?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Carter. We are. I will tell you that we may not have the tools to do it as sophisticatedly or as thoroughly as I would hope. But that's a priority for us to look at as well, is to be able to improve our information gathering, our data gathering on that, so that we can be more efficient at it.
Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing more about this and understanding the time frame for fuller development, you know, what we'll see down the road. Appreciate it. You don't have to answer that right now, though.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Carter and Director Shea. Okay, Commissioner Mattis Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take a moment and pause and celebrate this work, because I really think this might be the most impactful change that we've made to our county in the last several years. Like, as someone who, like Commissioner McDonough, you know, I have a disabled child, I am a client, and I have spent years banging my head against the wall thinking, I don't know how to do this. This is overwhelming. I don't know how to do it. And even in the last year, my son's caseworker became a navigator. Yay, Jeremy Head, he did a great job, right? And the social worker that stepped in behind helped me navigate not just, you know, the paperwork, but we moved my son into his permanent group home as an adult. during a pandemic, in a time where we couldn't visit places under restriction, and it moved from a different county out of Ramsey County to Dakota County, and it was as smooth as possible. So I just want to celebrate, like, personally, as a mom, as a resident, I am so grateful for this work. And I know that it wasn't because I'm a county commissioner, it's because that's the level of work that you're taking care of everyone. And even his managers at his previous group home said, man, it's so great to work with Ramsey County. What's changed over there? So I really want you to know people notice, and I really think this is the single most important change we've made. And we did it in a pandemic when we didn't have resources allocated. We were going to do it over a long plan, and you did it basically overnight. So I just wanted to pause for a moment and say thank you all for your really, truly spectacular work. And this is the change that we need for the future to make Ramsey County the place that people want to work, they want to live, and they want to do their business. So I just wanted to say that and to thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Matas-Castillo. Well said. I think we all share that level of gratitude. Thank you so much. Okay, I will call on Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The screen that Jim pointed to showed language as one of the issues. First of all, let me congratulate everybody. I think it's fantastic. I feel so comfortable and confident with the direction you're going and the progress you've made. I'm sort of honing in on the language because issue because we've come a long way. You know, back when I came into office in '95, during the joint property tax forums that we would have with the public, I had to act as the interpreter for Spanish. That tells you where we were at, which was fine. I more than, but the fact was, it was not even on the radar. Once we made it an issue, then we would identify folks, usually in the facilities department, to act as interpreters when we needed them. And since then, I cannot tell you, well, I know that in my district alone, I have a couple of dozen languages. So my question is, as we move, I find that as the very difficult task because there's never been a foundation for you to work from. It's almost like starting from scratch. The language issue is really critical. Even if you're bilingual, it becomes important because, you know, your understanding and expression usually comes from your first native tongue. And no matter how fluent you are in your second tongue, your second language, sometimes you just don't grasp all of the issues. And just yesterday, my brother and I were with my mom because she was in the hospital last week and she needs physical therapy. Even though she speaks English, when she got frustrated, she started talking in Spanish and to let folks know what she was going through. So I sort of want to get a sense of how are we addressing this, because it seems like language has been one of the last or has taken and I don't mean this in a negative way, a backseat to all the big issues that we've had in the past. But it's really critical as we move forward with this work, which is so important. I agree with everything that was said, especially Trista. I mean, boy, this is where the rubber meets the road for us, regardless of all the fancy stuff that we do. This is what it's all about. So I just want to get some thinking of how we're going to address this, because it is an issue. Now we have so many languages, so many communities that we need to connect with and provide good services for. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Shea.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair. It's a great question. First, before I address your question, I would like to just reply a little bit back on your comments and Commissioner Modis Castillo's comments as well. I want to make clear that, you know, we are the latest group to be championing, that's a hard word to say, this effort. And we do that built on a lot of work from a lot of other people. The IMT structure that was there that got this going under COVID, and all the residents work first that was done before that. I share your praise and our accomplishments with all of them because it has truly been a group effort. So I wanted to make that clear. And then secondly, to address your question regarding the language barriers, I think we all have seen and experienced the language issues that we have. The fact that the technologies that we have existing or the available options to us are limited and they're not good enough. I think that while this won't be an effort that we ourselves under the guise of enterprise services are looking at in a vacuum, because that wouldn't make sense. We do have, because one of the best things about having this work under the IPR service team is that we also have information services on our service team. So we're going to enlist their help, and we've already started some discussions with them about available technology that would be available countywide, not just for the enterprise services staff, but for the supporting businesses as well, that can definitely improve upon and bridge some of those gaps that we're having. So we're already in those discussions.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then I'm going to let Commissioner, but first of all, Karen Francois, yeah.
I think Melinda actually.
Oh, sorry, Melinda. Okay, you're pointing over here, but on my screen, it's pointing to Commissioner Reinhardt, but that's okay. I was going to call on her anyway, but Melinda, yeah, why don't you go?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to piggyback on a little bit of what Karen Shea mentioned about the language. Is that, you know, I want to sort of give a little bit of kudos in the spirit of giving shout outs to the staff who have experienced really the critical importance, if I can make up a word here this morning, of language and access to good interpretation and culturally relevant interventions and services. And so I want to say that the supervisors are leading this and making sure that staff and navigators are trained in what's already available. And then the double-edged sword is that, you know, it gives us more of a larger view on how we need to adjust and change and shift as a county as a whole. And so hopefully we'll be able to address more of what we're seeing in those advisory councils. But it's definitely one of the first questions you have to answer when you're asking for a navigated referral online is, do you need an interpreter when we call you back? And so that we're prepared to offer that and deliver that service in the language that you need. But you should rest assured that the supervisors that come from all different areas within the county instantly gravitate and understand the importance of language.
And Melinda, when we talk about measurement too, going forward, and what we measure is what we care about, I'm putting you on the spot a little, but I hope this is one of those pieces that we measure, is like, when is language the barrier that gets in the way, is something that I think we as an organization, to Commissioner Ortega's point, like we didn't even always measure it. So then we could shrug and say, we don't know how big of an issue it is. And yet I think on the ground, we realize how big of a deal it is. And so thinking through how we can keep that as one of our metrics towards service is the other piece. And I'm happy to help think that through with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now I will call on Commissioner Reinhardt, and then I have a couple questions. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I've been listening and really just very impressed with what is being done here. I think the one line in looking at the materials, and I thought it kind of speaks, it says it all, and it says enterprise services brings a residents first vision to life. And that's really what, you know, two of the commissioners, Commissioner Modis Castillo and McDonough, have talked about what it's meant in their lives and how it can change things. And I guess, and also some of the other comments that were made, you know, the comment about language. I remember, and I'm sure that there are still people out there that say, well, you should just do what our parents or grandparents or whatever did, and just learn English when you get here. Well, you know, there's a way to get things done, and that isn't the answer to everything. And besides that, the fact of the matter is, I remember, actually it was a former commissioner, and when he said that, it was like, and somebody had to teach them. You know, it didn't just, you land on our shores and boom, you got the language. And so there are so many different things that have to be taken into consideration. And really, again, going back to the earlier comments that were made about how we work together. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And language is such an important part of that. And even going to the, not just language, well, it is a language, but for the deaf community. And how we communicate, because all the services that are needed, some people are verbal and some are not. And so how do we deal with that? Some people can hear, some cannot. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that are going on. But it comes down to respect, and it comes down to working together and knowing that we've got the same goals in mind. So mostly I have, as you know, have been listening because I am just so impressed with the steps that we have taken and the empowerment that as a board, we really, empowerment and direction to staff, and boy, you have just taken it and run with it. So yes, bringing the Residents First vision to life is pretty darn exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. And yeah, thanks everyone for all of your work. I just have a couple of questions, and this has been touched on by my colleagues, but Commissioner McDonough mentioned about how, you know, our offices do get calls about constituent work, and our aides get to be navigators themselves. And so I'm just curious how you're going to handle the navigating between our offices and the work. You know, we hand off a lot of times our constituent calls, and then we sometimes don't always hear back, like, how did that happen? Or what happened there? I know there's data practices issues or data privacy issues here, but this goes to the, you know, information gathering and sharing and sort of keeping track of where these people, where our residents are in the process. And our offices, I mean, I personally like to know, you know, did we help them? Did they get served? So do you have any comments on that? Or I can just put it out there as an issue that I'm looking for as we work on these issues. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on how that works.
Madam Chair, that's an excellent question. And I'll be honest, I don't think we had that specifically down as something that we need to talk about, but we will bring it into the advisory councils, because we're aware that in order to get everybody on board and keep everybody on board, the feedback loop has to be continuous and to go both ways. And we have to close those loops, and we have to make sure that we're relaying both success stories and challenges. So we will make sure that that's built into the performance management, and specifically with your offices as well. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you so much, and thanks for naming it as the feedback loop. I know that, and I didn't name it there, but that's thank you so much for that. And just one other question, because we saw it in our early slides, and I love your slide deck, so I'm going to make a copy of the whole thing and use it. But you mentioned the Residents First funding that will then turn into levy funding. Can you just remind us that, you know, I think we'd set aside a specific amount of money for our Residents First work, and then we're going to internalize it on the levy. Can you just, I don't know who wants to take that, either yeah, Karen or Deputy County Manager Francois.
Yes, so just a reminder that along with my colleagues, Kathy Hedin and Joanna Berg, I am one of the sponsors, the executive sponsors for the Residents First program. So Karen Shea and team came before the Residents First sponsors with a proposal to move this work ahead in 2021. And the work, all of the work for enterprise services in 2021 is going to be funded with Residents First funding with that funding that was set aside for Residents First. We were very fortunate to be able to come to the team and ask for this funding and to get it. But we also know, and we've been working with County Manager O'Connor and our CFO, because we know that we're going to need funding to sustain the work. And of course, that will come from levy funding in 2022-23. And so we will be putting that in the IPR budget going forward.
And Madam Chair, on the budget side specifically, so in the previous biennial budget, there was the strategic, like 4 pieces around the wheel that were an underpinning countywide focus of the budget approved by the board. And one of those 4 quadrants dealt specifically with Residents First, policy, practice, procedure, and technology, which I would actually say started in the strategic plan. So it starts with strategic board workshop conversations, finds its way into the strategic plan. We organized our thoughts around it. It then became a part of the county manager's biennial budget proposal approved by the board. Now you hear the structure that's been built, and now you're hearing the type of work it is able to stand up. That then can become a part of the organization to free up additional money again to be a part of the next Residents First wave. This is an early preview that Residents First will be back as a priority in this upcoming budget. I do not think we've hit the point where it shouldn't be, but we'll talk about that more as we hit in August and ahead. But that's an important piece to like the framing of how it all comes together. And this is one of the most tangible examples of what we have meant by Residents First.
Thank you so much for pulling that all together, that whole picture of how this all comes to be. And right, putting it in the budget doesn't mean it's an actual add-on. It just means it's going to be part of a budget where we have money where we have money saved in other places so we can do this work. And so, but it's all so beneficial to what the work that we want to do is. So thank you. And I see that Commissioner McDonough has his hand raised. So Commissioner McDonough.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Listening to the conversation around the financing really triggered a question in my mind, right? Because this, moving, to the levy, yep, makes sense. But, in my head, I'm thinking, so, how do we drive ownership of this, though, throughout the organization for departments to see this as a value added rather than something over there, right? How do we see this as, where departments actually rely on them and partner with them, and that feedback loop that you talk about, they're hungry for that, right? Because that can help them do better. So, tying the financing to the ownership is a cold piece of that, and probably I'm good with the levy funding. But how are we thinking about actually tying this in so we're not building another silo of excellence here to solve a problem and leaving everything else off to the side?
Thank you. Yes, Karen, did I see you raising your hand, or Karen, either Karen Shea or Karen Francois or Ryan?
Well, I'll just go ahead, and Karen, please jump in here. But this is one of the reasons why we created the advisory councils. We've got folks across the organization on our advisory councils, and we will be taking advice, recommendations, suggestions, how to move this work forward and how to continuously improve it from people from all over the county. So Karen, if you wanted to add anything else to that, please feel free. You just muted yourself.
Mute, unmute, can't do it. Thank you very much, Karen, and commissioners and Madam Chair for the question. I would just add to what Karen said is that more specifically, when we looked at, for instance, the Operations Advisory Council, a couple of things they're looking at are the role of the navigator and how deep does that go? And it doesn't have to be the same for every single program, right? It will change depending on the program, which will help be reflected in that whole onboarding and prioritization process that we set, so that we can agree with the businesses that were there, the programs that were there to support exactly what kind of level they're looking at and how we can help offset that. And so that we are in partnership creating the role of the navigator specifically for their programs or their needs. And again, having that feedback loop, I think that will be helpful.
The other thing I wanted to add, Commissioner McDonough and Madam Chair, the other thing I wanted to add is that we will have community members as part of our advisory councils as well. And with regard to the Senior Advisory Council, this is senior level managers from all service teams. And we chose them and spoke with their leadership because we wanted them to be empowered to represent and communicate to multiple departments and programs across their service teams. And they'll be key in developing the future state service delivery roadmap. The Operations Advisory Council is made up of mid-level management from all service teams, and they are also empowered to represent and communicate to multiple departments and programs across their service teams. So it's really, really important to us. And I hope you can see the importance that we do have voices from across the county, because the services that the navigators will be helping our residents with, they're across the county. It's not just an IPR thing, as I mentioned earlier. You know, this has to be and is a county-wide collaboration.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner McDonough. I'm going to let Melinda has her hand up. I'm thinking it's on this point, and we have a number of hands raised. But Melinda, did you want to comment on this point?
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner McDonough. I really appreciate the spirit of your question, which is what I imagine about is transformative thinking about the budget and how we can collectively work together about how our services are impacting more than one service area, and what does that say for just unique ways of thinking about the budget. One of the things I want to add to your siloed question, so we don't have that same outcome, is that we're doing that in operations right now with having navigators rotating sites. So there's not one navigator assigned to one site. There's not one supervisor assigned to one site. They are all responsible for the operations of how that all works. And so there's not an incentive to hold tight to how pretty and fancy and nice Roseville is, and it's beautiful. Because their performance is measured differently. And so my goal is to use that in pushing the Operations Council and Advisory Council forward, and how we think about what that means for people's individual back office services and how that's running in their own operations.
Thank you so much for that, Melinda. Tony, Commissioner Carter, did you have your,
Yeah, it's really quick. I thank you for allowing me. As I look at this last page, where we have been talking about one county, one door, right door, I see has been appended here. I got to tell you, I have this image that's in my head based on today's presentation. And it really is of that one county, one door, now understandably being a door that's open to all, you know, from both sides, with all our community engaged around it. That one county, one door is open to all, and the work that you've done here makes certain that that's a two-way flow between our county and our residents. So thank you so very much for this work.
Yes, and I'm going to let Ryan make some of the last remarks, as well as Karen Francois, but I just want to remind people that there's these key takeaways that were at the beginning of the presentation, and the one that we're talking about now, that even though Enterprise Services lives in the IPR service team, but it's an organization-wide and community collaboration. So it's just goes to what we're talking about here, that this is something we do want to be ingrained in everything we do and part of our system, and not just a program sitting over here. I mean, this is what we do. And I just have appreciated so much that you're already pivoting. You've identified a process, and then you already pivoted into a different process, and you're moving quickly and nimbly. And I really appreciate all of that. I appreciate all of your work, that this is a work in progress with our community. And I'm looking forward to continued updates on all of this. So with that, I'm going to let Ryan or whoever, I'm going to let Ryan, then Karen, or whoever, and Karen and Melinda make any last remarks that you would like, but just thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I just want to give I want to call out three things to just be thinking about as we move forward on the work, and then I'll go to Deputy County Manager Francois. On the redeployment side, this almost gets glossed over as a part of our story, but I think it's going to be an important part as we learn about our own history and try and set the stage for the future. Redeployments are not an easy thing, we have learned, particularly in an organization experiencing so many things at once. And I want to give a shout out to Scott Williams for leading the redeployment effort and having to find people, but then everybody across the county who raised their hand with a willingness to say yes, including Melinda, who helped lead this here today, right? And Jenny Zhang in the county manager's office, just to name a few of many people. And in the two areas where redeployments have been successful, it was this area and in the housing stability area. And in both areas, we're proud of what's come out of that work, but it doesn't work if folks from corrections and social services and IPR and everywhere else doesn't actually say, like, I'm willing to take on something new during a pandemic, and I don't even know what tomorrow is going to look like. And that's just a really big deal for us to continue to think about in the appreciation on the back end of the recognition side as well. In the residents first stuff, as you look ahead, an ongoing conversation we're having is how to transform from a website and a phone call to potentially something as streamlined as an app for Ramsey County, where you can access services and start to fill out forms and be able to get in line. We're not here to unveil an app today. This is not that type of a meeting, but at the same time to continue to point a North Star to where we're trying to go and what that could mean in terms of access across the community. We're wrestling through that. We're not a tech company, but we want to figure out the best ways to make it as streamlined and make that door as available as possible through the device that so many carry, and make that one of the many ways to access. And then finally, just because it goes under the, it would be under the radar here today, but it gets to the part of like, how do you change the system while also doing this work? On Friday, the CFO and Deputy County Manager Hadeen and I had a meeting with one of the state's largest agencies to talk at a leadership level about areas where, like, we want to sit at the table and help shape what the future looks like. And it's not to say we don't want to participate in 9 different governance committees and things. We're just saying, like, let's be unabashedly willing to reform as we go. And that would directly feed into this type of work as well. So I want to give a shout out to Alex and Kathy for making those conversations happen as well, because it's kind of that both and, like, all the time thing that hopefully gets us to where we want to go. Karen.
Thank you, County Manager O'Connor. And there are so many people to thank. But first, I want to say that I think one of the reasons why IPR was chosen to house this work is because all of the departments within IPR are enterprise-wide functions. IS, communications and public relations, we all have an impact on what happens across the county, including, the work that we do in the assessor's office and the auditor treasurer's work. So I was really pleased when the county manager talked with me about taking on this work, but it was really a logical place to end up. But I do really want to thank the IMT folks. Again, Scott Williams for helping with redeployment, and specifically Maggie Dreon and Mark McCabe and Katrina Mosser, Elizabeth Tolzman, from almost day one within the IMT structure. We started having conversations about how do we redesign and accelerate redesigning the way we deliver our services. So I just want to say thank you to all of those guys, but also to thank you, because you've provided a lot of feedback for us that has helped us design and deliver the way we are, and also keeping in mind that we're always looking for ways to improve the way we deliver our services. I'm really glad that Ryan wasn't announcing a new app today, because I would have been like, oh, surprised. But yeah, we are always looking at better ways. It's all about our residents and our other customers. And I think we live that in IPR, but we also live that across the county in all of our service teams. And I think with your leadership and the executive leadership and the senior management teams, I think we all are all about how we deliver services with excellence to our residents and other customers. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today. I want to thank Karen and Melinda and team. They've been just working so hard and doing such a great job. I am so looking forward to Melinda being a part of our team now. Thank you, Melinda, for choosing us. And thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. This workshop is over, but just thanks for all your work. Everybody. Big round of applause. Work. Yes.
Take care.
Well done.
Thank you. Yes.
Good job.
Well done. Great job.